the next point is like actually not accepting the belief that this wasn't for me. Bullshit. Why not?
You wouldn't be able to like teach them how to do something if you hadn't done it. Then how are you going to help someone else get through that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like really being...
Welcome back to Wildly Empowered Women. Today I have an absolute legend on the podcast and she came from the corporate world. I've got Tiff Dendel Foster with me in the house.
And I believe that corporate equals success. Corporate does not necessarily equal success.
This woman has such an incredible growth mindset. She learnt everything that she knows on the job.
And the third thing that I never did.
Welcome back, gorgeous. Today I have an absolute legend on the podcast. You may recognize her beautiful voice from one of the earlier episodes of this podcast, one of the OGs. I've got Tiff Dendel Foster with me in the house, and today we are talking about a really awesome topic. But before we get into that, I want to just reflect on the first conversation that we had, which was all around personal branding. So if you haven't heard it, go back right to the beginning. It was one of the very first episodes with Tiff on personal branding, and there's just so much value in that. Tiff is a really good friend of mine, and she came from the corporate world and was able to replace her income with this business and with the skills that she learned being so damn coachable. This woman has such an incredible growth mindset. And she didn't come into this with experience. She didn't come into this having, years of network marketing experience or social media experience or marketing experience. She learnt everything that she knows on the job. And that's what I love so much about you, Tiff, is you are like the most coachable, growth-minded human. And it's been so beautiful to witness your journey in this business and just do life and friendship alongside of you. You're such a legend. And Tiff and I, we see each other all the time. We both live on the Northern Beaches, and we are so fortunate to be able to work together in this business. And we co-founded the Wildly Empowered Collective together. And this woman is just all about just as passionate and fierce around female empowerment as what I am. And she's also created so much success from just really finding her voice and unleashing her voice and finding her genius zone. So there's so much that I could go on about with your success, Tiff, and I'm so proud of you, and it lights me up to share that. And also it's not been, rainbows and butterflies to get here, right? And that's what I actually wanted to talk about on this episode of like what it truly takes and what you shared recently on your Instagram around what you did do, the steps that you followed when things weren't working, and what you didn't do as a self-responsible, self-aware leader, what you didn't do when things weren't working. So thank you so much, firstly, for being here today. I'm pumped to dive into this.
What an intro. Thank you so much. I was thinking like smiling and nodding profusely. It's so cool to just like reflect on for a second, like what we've actually co-created and like how the universe literally just like brought us together so perfectly. And the fact that like we literally live 10 minutes away from each other and we wouldn't have connected if it wasn't for this incredible space. And also everything that we've journeyed through together is just mind blowing. So thank you so much for having me back on the phone.
Pleasure. Easiest intro I've ever done. Didn't have notes, didn't need them. Just that was just all free flow, baby, because I love you so much. So let's dive into it. So let's go through. You have I feel like this is kind of like a 5-step formula that you've created here. What were the steps that you followed when things weren't working as a self-responsible, self-aware leader that you beautifully are?
Oh, so many things. Like I created this recently, and for context, like I literally just posted it to share it in this format, and you immediately were like, we need to talk about this because this isn't something that like I've crafted, and it's like something that I've like, spent so much time over to perfect or anything. It was literally just like me sitting over a coffee thinking to myself, like when I witness in women or in conversations that I have that it's like, I hear so many times, not necessarily in this business, but in conversation with women that I have who have tried other businesses or other careers or, network marketing companies or whatever the conversation might be. And it's always like, oh, it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. And there's always like a really big question mark around that, because I understand that sometimes things genuinely just don't work out the way that we anticipated, the way that we would have loved, the way that we planned. Like things don't always happen and execute perfectly exactly how we wanted it to. And also there's an element that I find is missing in that self-aware, self-responsible leader who makes shit happen regardless, and not coming from a perspective of like, you have to run yourself in the ground and you have to hustle really hard to like force things to happen, but actually like zoom out and it's like plan, do, review type of vibe. Like coming from the corporate world, I was in a space of where I was in marketing events and I was always executing. And I remember I would always, after every single event, we would do what we called a retrospective. So we would reflect on what worked well, what didn't go so great, and what we could improve for next time, maybe even what we wouldn't do again. So that is so deeply ingrained in me to look at my business in the same light. And no matter what it is, I will look at it and really think to myself, like, how is that actually going? Look at actual data and not just, throw spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks, or like close my eyes and shoot whatever it is that I'm doing, but actually looking at it from the perspective of like, what can I always be doing differently? What could I do better? Where can I pivot? And actually being a self-aware, self-responsible leader who zooms out on your own business or whatever it is that you are doing and think to yourself, like, how can I improve this? How could this be better? And as I said, I was just literally sitting at coffee and I was just creating this through 100% inspired by conversations from women, real women, who are saying that this thing doesn't work and that thing doesn't work and it didn't work. And there's like so much of this negativity of like, it just didn't work for me. It's not working. I'm going to give up. I'm going to quit. I've failed. That type of mentality. And with that, I always think to myself, like, well, what's the solution? Really, as a self-responsible, self-aware leader, what is the solution? The solution isn't to quit. It's not to give up. It's not to say that you failed and it didn't work. So as I was writing this, it's just something that I realized when there was a point in my business where I feel like it wasn't working and things weren't happening the way that I would have loved them to, at the speed that I would have loved them to. Things got a little bit sticky and I was like, this just isn't working. There has to be another way. Growth mindset. There has to be another way. I followed this step without it. I guess it was like embodied wisdom. Like I didn't even realize that I was doing this until I reflected on it. And I was like, what did I actually do in that moment when I realized that it wasn't working? How did I pivot? What did I do differently? What did I decide what steps did I follow to then get to a point now where business is thriving and we've created like such an incredible collective and we each have incredible businesses. Like what did we actually do? What did I do to be able to get to that point? And the steps that I followed were, I guess you could call them like the 5 steps that I followed in that time to be able to get to this point that I am now. And it's not to say that I followed them one time and I found the magic solution and then I just stuck to it. Because the first step is I decided to pivot. And in that, it literally just means being aware of like, okay, this isn't working. This feels really sticky. And just asking yourself, like zooming out, what can I do differently? Is it time to pivot? And one of the key things with pivoting is like actually being patient with it. Like once you decide that you are going to pivot, there's obviously a number of steps that I feel have followed that to be able to get to the point of where we are now, or like whatever the solution that I created for myself was. But deciding to pivot actually means giving it an opportunity to grow legs and like giving it enough time for whatever you do end up implementing, that you've given it time to like grow legs and like have a life and like actually have data that you can collect to review the results and actually see physically or intangibly like how it's actually working, and not just be like, oh, I tried it one time and it didn't work. Like, do not come to me and tell me that you tried for a few weeks and it didn't work. Yeah. Like, I'll send you right back. Like, we're not going there. That is not the type of mindset that we want, and that is not what is going to set you up for success. But from the first step, I guess, was I just decided to pivot. I recognized that things just weren't working. It didn't feel the way that I wanted it to feel. And I really just looked at what I could be doing differently. So that was the first step. And then step 2, which I feel is something that you can continue to do over and over and over again, is identify the gaps. really the way that I love to look at this business in particular, if you think of like the do's, like the things that we need to be doing, the daily actions that we need to be doing in order to get the results, like the be, do, have analogy. If you think of the do in terms of your daily actions as like a checklist or even just like a funnel, if you are a visual person, I always love to think of it this way. In order to be able to identify the gaps, you need to actually identify in that process, in that funnel, in that checklist, what's actually not working. An example of that could be, say, for example, you are, in my instance, the things that we need to do in order to get to the sale would be creating the content, attracting people to your inbox, having a conversation with them, directing them to a webinar. After the webinar, they can jump on a clarity call, have their questions answered, jump into the business, sale done. In a perfect world, that's how it gets to go. And it gets to be that quick, easy, simple. If you're not able to get to the sale piece, there's like a kink in the hose. Somewhere along the checklist, there's something that's not working. So you need to identify the gap of what's not working. So as a real life example, if you are creating content and you are having people who are being attracted to what it is that you have to offer, and they are landing in your inbox and they are asking you questions, but you can never get them past watching a webinar, you can never get them onto a clarity call, you can never get them to that next step, then there's your gap that's just been identified. You've identified that you need to work on your conversations in order to be able to get someone from your inbox past the webinar to actually book the call. So when I say identify the gaps, to me, that's what that looks like. And that's what I was able to identify in my own process, in my own business, where I wasn't able to get someone to the next step. And it's not to say that, you have 3 conversations and all 3 people say, this isn't for me, I'm not interested in going to the next step. It's bigger than that. You need to be doing enough and like having enough conversations to actually have data to see that maybe you had 50 conversations or 100 conversations, or as we always say, like 10,000 hours, you've had hundreds of conversations and you keep getting stuck in the same spot. That's like lights and sirens. Like that's a problem. You need to focus on that. That's your gap. You really need to dedicate time to actually improving that skill set. So that's the second step. And then the third step is creating a plan. Like, what do you need to focus on? We've just identified the gap. In this instance, we'll use conversations as an example. Say, for example, then we need to focus on conversations. How can we create a plan if that's what the gap is? In my instance, I feel like it was much deeper than that. It was much bigger than like one particular skill set. But for the sake of simplicity and as an example, if we were just saying that we need to focus on conversations, what's the plan? Where to from here? Is it, do you have training available? Do you have a mentor? What do you have any type of training that you can focus on to actually improve the conversations that you're having? Is it, do you get stuck on sales conversations? Do you get stuck on not knowing what questions to ask? Do you get stuck on feeling intrusive? Is it a mindset thing? Is it like a lack, scarcity, abundance thing? Like identifying within your gap of conversations, like how you actually feel. And is it a skill set? Is it a skill set and a mindset thing? Is it a lot deeper than that? Like really identifying what that is and then creating your plan on what you actually need to be able to proceed and step forward and like keep going and not just like get stuck and quit there. And then from there, step 4 is seeking guidance from a mentor. I was obviously so fortunate to have you as an incredible mentor. And really, once you create the plan, I really thought about which way this could go when I was writing out these steps for that post. And the reason I put create a plan first is because we want to be proactive. We don't want to go to the mentor with like, oh, I thought of this thing and like I kind of have this idea, but I don't really know what I want. So like, tell me what to do. Like that's not proactive, self-aware, self-responsible. We want to be proactive, self-aware, self-responsible and go to the mentor with a plan of action, with what you think you need to do in your business, and then just get guidance on that from someone who's further ahead than you, from someone who has more experience than you, to actually go, that's an incredible plan. I would potentially change this, or they might even give you the like full just push, like go, absolutely. Everything that you've created is amazing. Go and do it. And then after that, step 5 is to get into action. And again, coming back to giving your plan and the way that you are pivoting an opportunity to actually grow legs and be successful is to not just take that plan and get into action for a few days, a few weeks even. It's actually giving it at least minimum 90 days of doing the thing consistently. And when I say consistently, I don't mean like once a week for 3 months. I mean like every single day, full focus, full intention, full action, that you are dedicated, devoted, and committed to completing this thing as a whole. And then seeing what happens from there, like really giving it an opportunity to actually be something. So you have tangible data to then go, okay, how did it feel? What worked? What didn't work? What can I do better? Where can I potentially tweak something? Do I have to pivot completely? Did it not work at all? Like you actually have feedback from your experience of what that is, like what your next steps are in the plan. Like, do you have to go back to the drawing board? Can you just tweak one thing? Like that's really the way that I see creating a plan. First of all, like I said, deciding that it's time to pivot and not just sticking with it and thinking like, I'll just keep going because I've been doing this for so long and it's working for other people. So like, this is just the way my business is. Like my business is a bit shit and like, it's okay. You'll just end up quitting. Like where can you actually be self-aware, self-responsible and create a plan for yourself and go through and like seek the support that you feel that you need and then get into action for long enough to see the results.
What I love so much about this is we always say, you know, you've got to show up as the person that you want to attract, right? If you want to attract self-aware, self-responsible people, then you have to be that yourself. And so what I love about these steps are you've really taken the time to, as you say, like plan, do, and review, but also that in itself is such a big takeout for anyone listening that is building a business and wanting to, especially doing attraction marketing. Are you being the type of person that you actually want to attract into your business? Like deciding to pivot, right? Deciding to actually be proactive and go, okay, what isn't working? And then what's my plan? I'm going to look at, you know, if you were in the corporate environment, you wouldn't just go to your boss with a problem. You'd go to your boss with like a problem and a possible solution and then get, you know, a little bit of feedback, which is exactly what you've said with like the whole mentor situation of like actually being proactive first and then seeing if there's any improvements or add-ons or maybe you've just nailed it, right? Because the thing is, as a leader, and you do this so well, Tiff, like you can't take someone somewhere that you haven't been. So it's like, again, in a work situation, if you were onboarding a new person into your team and they were junior to you, you wouldn't be able to like teach them how to do something if you hadn't done it before. So inevitably, everyone is going to go through ups and downs in their business in any, you know, entrepreneurial journey, where there's times where you're in massive momentum and things are flowing, and also times where things aren't flowing as well. So if you haven't been able to get through that time of like, okay, what did I do when things weren't feeling that aligned, when things weren't really, you know, happening the way that I wanted to, what did I do? Then how are you going to help someone else get through that? You know, like it's such great leadership, which is why I'm so grateful to talk on this topic.
Before we go on, I want to ask you a super powerful question. What would it mean to you to make decisions based on your soul rather than your bank balance? Freedom to me means having true autonomy and choice in your life to live based off your values and soul's desires, rather than what you can purely afford for you and your family or what your job requires of you. This is why I've been empowering women for the past almost 5 years to earn more with pleasure, earning your true worth without the insane hustle and with actually having choice in your life. It is so much more about how you earn rather than what you earn. If you'd like to learn more about how I mentor women to earn a time-leveraged income online, selling conscious, health-based products and learning the skills of personal branding and attraction marketing, both very sexy skills to have, then click on the link in the show notes or DM me the word info on Instagram so we can have a proper chat. I love having one-on-one convos with you savvy queens and showing you how this kind of income and our community can help you truly live wildly empowered. Big love, back to the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Like really being self-aware first and foremost. Like I feel like I've said that so many times throughout this, but really that's where it starts. Like even identifying that something's not working means that you're self-aware. You are self-responsible and you're looking at your business from a bird's eye view going, okay, what can I do differently? Because if the way that I see it is, if it's working for other people, like if I can see, we have so much evidence that this business works. If it can work for somebody else, why can't it work for me? I just need to figure out for me what works specifically for me. Like, even though I've learned so much of what I know from you, there's still areas of our business that are going to be so different, because we, as much as we have so many similarities, we're different human beings. Like, we have different values, different, like all the different things. So first and foremost is like, actually, it all comes down to being self-aware in the beginning to even have any level of awareness that something needs fixing. And what I see and what I don't want people to get hung up on is like the whole what I didn't do perspective through all of this is I didn't blame anyone because my business wasn't working the way that I wanted it to. I didn't justify as to why, if we have accountability in our business, for example, and if, how often do we hear on accountability calls like the justification of like why someone didn't do the thing that they said they were going to do the previous week, like calling a spade, like there's so much justification that we do within our lives as to like, oh, I couldn't do that thing that I said I was going to do because, dog ate my homework kind of vibe. Like we've heard every excuse, and that's a justification. Like we've heard every excuse under the sun as to why something didn't happen or something didn't work or whatever the case might be. And that really is also becoming victim to the results that you're not getting. Like whether you like it or not, the results that you are or aren't getting all come back to you. You are responsible for both, whether you are getting exactly what you want and so much more, or whether you're not even close to getting anything that you desire in your business from a results perspective. You're responsible for both. And be a really hard pill to swallow, but it just is something that you really need to accept, which the next point is like actually not accepting the belief that this wasn't for me and it wasn't going to work for me. Like I feel like that is something that can come up a lot as well. It's just, again, justifying, oh no, but this business worked for that person, but it's just not going to work for me. It's just not for me. Bullshit. Why not? You have evidence, so much evidence that this can work. It is working for literally thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Who knows? Why not you? I really feel like it's just mindset and beliefs. And the third thing that I never did, I never quit, ever. It doesn't matter how sticky things were. It didn't matter how uncomfortable things were. It didn't matter how hard things were. I never quit. That was never, ever, ever an option for me.
So powerful. And I love that we've spoken about those things because they're such common limiting beliefs that can come up in an entrepreneurial journey of like the blame, the victim, it's for others but not for me. Like what the hell? Like other people are, some like non-human person doing the exact same thing and it happens to work for them and not for you. Like they are the things that you need to be self-aware enough to be, you need to be aware enough of those beliefs and those thoughts so that they don't become a recurring part of your story. Because, your story is the thing that you play out and it's what you attract. And like you said, Tiff, like it's a hard pill to swallow, but whatever results you're getting in your life and your business, you've actually created. And that actually doesn't just go for business. It's also like relationships, finances, like your living situation. We create our reality. And whatever it is that we are tolerating, we will get more of. If you don't tolerate something, like for you, Tiff, you were like, okay, what I'm doing right now isn't working and I'm not going to tolerate it. So I'm actually going to sit down and put in the time and the effort to review what I'm doing and work out a bit of a plan to change, to pivot, to change my strategy. Some people won't do that because it's just easier to stick their head in the sand and not look at the fact that things aren't going the way that they want to in a certain area of their life. So I feel like these 5 steps are really key in anything that you're not seeing a result in your life and you want to be seeing results.
Mm-hmm. And just being willing to learn, like being so willing to always be a student, like no matter what level you're at, like I still learn every day. Whether it's like through mentors or if it's like through something that I watch or I'm inspired by, or even through my own team. Like my team hold up mirrors and I learn from my team even if it's like not necessarily a skill set thing, but maybe it's a leadership thing. Like I learn from everyone around me all the time, and I'm so open to receiving those lessons and just being so willing to be persistent and have the expectation of your resiliency. Like you are going to have to be resilient. You are going to have to create grit and just be okay with being a student and learning and pivoting and learning and pivoting. Like if I told you the amount of times I have pivoted in my business, I would literally send you in circles. Like I'm sure you're the same. Like our journey, no one's journey is ever linear, but the amount of times that we have been so willing to give something a go and be like, well, it didn't quite work the way that we would have loved it to, but like, let's try again. Like, what else can we do differently? What feels good? Like, how can we play with this and just like try again? Like literally just pick up where you left and just try again. And even if you've like found the magic formula and you're like, fuck yes, this is like, we are thriving. This is working so well. Social media is a beast that's constantly evolving. And you probably will get to a point where you're like, well, shit, that thing that we were like thriving in like 6 months ago, like it's just not really working anymore. And you're going to have to pivot again. It's not a negative thing that you have to pivot. Like, again, changing the mindset of like how you see the requirement of having to pivot, because it is a requirement. It is going to be required of you to be open and self-aware to then go, okay, this isn't working. What can I do differently? And not seeing it as a negative, like, oh, this isn't working. Like, what can I do differently? Like that's the energy in that is like, what can I do differently?
Yeah.
How can I make this a success? Like, what can I try again? Like, how can I have fun with this?
It's an evolution too, right? Like you are evolving your growth and what you're capable of. I keep thinking when you're saying pivot, like the Ross episode of Friends, like pivot, pivot, pivot. It's so good.
I can't feel like that.
And so, okay, let's give everyone a little bit of context as well. You know, you replaced your income from working in events for a very big multinational company, corporate, worked in Pitt Street in the city, like a very corporate hustle lifestyle, similar to what I came from. Replaced your income. What does your day look like now? Like, give us an example of what your day looks like now as a full-time high-ticket affiliate marketer.
I want to say whatever I feel like, but with that, I'm still productive. I still get things done. I'm responsible. I still like do all the things, but I love to like plan out my week. And I know this is something that you do as well, is like on a Monday, I actually get really excited to like plan out my week and like with all the projects and the things I want to get done and like the things I love to like slot them into my week and just like go into my week with like full clarity of what life gets to look like. And actually get excited, like, this is the life that I wanted and I've actually created it. And I'm not even like where I want to go. Like we're like you said, we're constantly evolving. We're constantly like dreaming bigger, doing bigger. Like we're just like, we're fucking going for it. So it's just like for right now, I'm really excited for where my life is right now. But every single day I kind of have like the same sort of morning routine. And if you're on my Instagram, you will see I share my morning routine every single day. And it's what people have learned to expect from me. But I will always go for a walk with my golden retriever, Lila. We will get a coffee. In the summer, it's an iced latte. When it's winter, it's a hot latte. My wildly empowered collective pink cup. Creature of habit. We'll go for a walk. And I always will I'll just actually get to like sit and sip my coffee in peace. I love just like sitting at the cafe. I'll like reply to DMs and create content. I'll journal, like really just asking myself, like, what do I feel like doing in this moment? And things obviously naturally become a habit, but actually asking myself, what do I feel like doing? And not just like being a workhorse, because that's what I was so used to doing, which is like work. Like actually coming from a place of like, what do I feel like doing? How does this feel in my body? And working in that way. And then every single day looks a little bit different. Like my non-negotiables every day from like a do perspective are to create content and have conversations. Like in terms of the do, like no matter what level you're at, like those two things will never change. Like I know you still do those two things every single day as well. Like it actually doesn't have to be that glamorous. Like the two things that are required of you are those two things to build your business. Naturally, as co-founders of the Wildly Empowered Collective, we're always working on different projects and like supporting the team and like all the different things that we get to do, planning retreats and like all the stuff. Like it's just such a vibe, but every day is a little bit different. And I really just create space to ask myself what I feel like doing, which is new for me. Like I didn't have that before. I would just wasn't as self-aware or as conscious as I am now of what I actually feel like doing with my day, and like where can I find pockets of joy, and like how can I make time for myself, and actually really reflect also on like what my day was, and be so grateful for the fact that once upon a time, like former me 3 years ago would have like absolutely just fangirled over this life. Like there's so many things that I have in my life now that I deeply, deeply yearned for years ago. And it's really easy to forget when this becomes your reality that like there's so many people who are in your shoes who don't live the life that you live, who deeply yearn for the same life and don't believe that it's possible for them. So I actually really like to showcase from a lifestyle perspective, like when you choose differently, this is what you get to create for yourself. And it's not to say that your life is going to look the same as mine, because I chose this. I chose my reality. Whatever you're choosing for yourself is what you actually get to create when you have a business vehicle that is supporting you to be in your life and still be making an income.
It's pretty wild, isn't it? Because I was thinking about this morning as well, about how, you know, when you replace your income, it's actually not about the money. You're still making the same amount of money. It's not the money. It is the lifestyle. Like when I first replaced my income, I was trying to fall pregnant with Freddie, and I had been doing IVF, and I'd literally been, like doing all this stuff, and then went on to the most crazy protocol, like literally got rid of plastic, anything that was chemical in the house, was eating this like completely organic diet, all this stuff that and seeing a biochemist that was a 5-hour round trip, like 2.5-hour drive each way. And it's like, if I hadn't have replaced my income, I probably wouldn't have a second child, and I sure as hell would not be pregnant with my third, because we just wouldn't have had the money and the time to invest into falling pregnant each of those times. And it's wild to me. Like I was sitting out the front, like having my lunch, just thinking, oh my God, like more people need to realize that it's not all about the money. It's about the choice that this way of creating money really, really gives you, which for you, I know, like similarly, it's the lifestyle. It's the lifestyle that you now get to live.
Yeah. I really felt like before I just didn't have any time for myself. Like I've said this so many times. I literally felt like I holidayed here. Like we live in the most incredible, beautiful place, and I only spent the weekends here. And even when I was spending my weekends here, I still wasn't fully present, because I was always thinking about the next thing. I was always thinking about the next event, thinking about what I'd missed, thinking about what was required of me. Like I was always so in my head that I didn't really ever enjoy the beautiful place that we live. And now that's why I often say, you know, the lifestyle that you see through my Instagram, for example, you might just think to yourself like, oh my God, doesn't she get bored of like living the same morning routine? I'm like, no, like this actually still means so much to me. Like I used to go down to the place I walk every single morning. There was a period when I was still in corporate that I was working from home very briefly. And I remember I would go there like on a lunch break or like in any kind of pocket of time that I could possibly find. And I didn't have Lila then, because I still, like, I wasn't home enough. Like I was always commuting and I was always away from home, and it wouldn't have been fair to have a dog and never be home to be with the dog. I wanted to be fully present and like literally raise her like a child. And I used to go down to this place and I would just sit there and I would literally dream and like envision the life that I wanted to create for myself. So every day when I walk down there, it's taking me back to the life that I once deeply yearned for, that I'm now living, to remind myself like how fucking lucky I really am and how grateful I am that I'm so proud of myself for making that decision 3.5 years ago. Because it went against everything I ever knew. It went against everyone was telling me no, like scam, like what are you doing? Like all the, like, you know, the typical things. We've heard it all before. Everyone thinks you're like batshit crazy for doing something different because they can't support something that they don't understand. It is not a reflection of you or your decision making. It is fully a reflection of them, their limiting beliefs and their lack of knowledge, really. So I'm so grateful that me 3.5 years ago, didn't listen to anyone, and I chose this life regardless of what anyone was saying. And going and doing the same morning routine in the same spot takes me back to that memory all the time. Like I still feel it in my body that me 3.5 years ago, like seriously would have killed for this life. all I wanted was time. All I wanted was choice. I wanted the dog, but like couldn't afford the dog. Like there was nowhere for me. I was literally just like grasping at straws, just trying to get by every single day.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about when we were driving to dinner the other night about the fact that we don't have to set an alarm. That one thing, like not having a morning alarm. And I remember saying to you, oh yeah, you know, like I used to be at daycare at 7:30 and we were the first people there when the doors opened at 7:30 to drop Tio off. And then you were like, I was on the bus at, what was it, 6:40 or something?
Yeah, like 6:40, 6:45.
Oh my God. And I, which I totally understand. And that would have been, if I didn't have a child, I probably would have done that too. Like I would have gotten into the office earlier because we both had to commute into the city. But now I look at that and I'm like, even just to not have anywhere to be in the morning, you know, like even just not to have an alarm that you need to set every night for the next morning, that to me is freedom. That one small thing feels like freedom to me. Doesn't mean I don't get up. And, you know, I actually really do love time without the kids being up. And I do that sometimes. This pregnancy, hell no, hasn't felt good for me. My morning routine is out the window, like especially this last trimester. But I have the freedom to choose that, like what feels good, what feels expansive. So I love that you've shared that. It gave me goosebumps when you said you go back to that place now where you once basically scripted this entire life that you're now living. How incredible.
The polarity is honestly just wild. It's like when you're so in this way of living now, it's really easy to forget how hard life actually was before.
Yeah.
So when people feel really stuck and they feel like making that decision to actually say yes, the thing is really hard. Like I hear you, I get it. So do you. We were you. We've literally been in your shoes. And also you get to empower yourself to choose differently.
Yeah.
Despite like the thoughts in your head, despite the words that people are saying to you, like you actually get to choose differently. And it doesn't matter how long you've been committed to doing the thing. Like if you would have asked me even like a year or two before I decided to leave the corporate world, if I would ever do that, I would have said no, because I was so deeply committed to building my career. And I always knew that I wanted to be successful. Like success was inevitable for me. Like it wasn't a choice. It was like, I'm here to live an extraordinary life, but how can I create that extraordinary life? That was the question for me. And I believed, because I didn't know any different, and that's okay because most people don't, is I believed that it meant successful meant corporate. Like you had to go into the corporate world and you had to climb the corporate ladder and make the 6 figures. And I believed that corporate equaled success. Corporate does not necessarily equal success. No matter what, you are still capped, and your work and what you earn is not a true reflection of your input. And that's one thing I love about this business so much, is that it might not be an immediate gratification, immediate ROI with your time, energy, and even financial investment, but you have the uncapped and infinite opportunity to 10x, fucking 20x, 30, whatever you want. Like it is literally limitless. The corporate world would never give you that.
Yeah.
Ever. It doesn't matter how hard you work. You might get the promotion. You might get a slight pay rise. You might get a really good bonus that 12 months, but you have to go again the next 12 months, and you have to go again the next 12 after that. And then there's somebody who's waiting, trying to get your job, and then you have to try again. You have to always be doing more if you want to keep growing. It's unsustainable.
Yeah.
Like you get to choose again. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it.
Yeah. Love that so much. So if anyone's listening and wanting to be mentored by Tiff, want to learn more about the business that we both do, high ticket affiliate marketing, more about the Wildly Empowered Collective, and just in general, like how we make money, where would you like them to go to stalk you / get in touch with you?
Definitely my Instagram. I'm such an Instagram gal.
Awesome. That will be in the show notes. I highly recommend a stalk. Tiff is also a designer, and she's created like the most incredible designs and stuff on her Instagram by learning the art of graphic design too. So I just have to say it's very visually beautiful to go and stalk as well. So you're welcome. Lastly, I would love to ask you, and you know, if you haven't listened to it, I just want to plug again that it was episode 14, the personal branding episode that Tiff and I did on how to create a powerful personal brand and have the mindset for success, because we went a little bit deeper into your story and loads of tips. So go and listen to that. But I want to ask again, in case the answer has changed as well. If you could go back to your 21-year-old self, what would you tell her? If you could tell her one thing.
Before we wrap up this episode, I want to ask you a question. Do you remember how you discovered this podcast? Was it a friend's suggestion or an Instagram story, maybe a post? Somehow you found it, and I'm hoping you're getting a lot of value from it. I need your help now to pay it forward so that other women can feel seen, heard, nourished, and more than anything, empowered from these conversations too. Big love, back to the episode.
I remember what I said last time. I think it was not to take life so seriously, and I still 100% stand by that. And like, conditioning is so real. Like, that's still something that I'm consciously aware of, and I am so aware of just like always being like in my joy, playing, like having fun, and not taking life so seriously. But the other thing I would say is being open to what life is showing you, because life was showing me through so many signs in my personal life, like my relationship, my health, my happiness, that what I was doing actually wasn't working. And the plan, the 5-step plan that I gave earlier in this podcast, I didn't follow in the corporate world. This is something that I've learned in my business and implemented in my business. I wish that my 21-year-old self, when I was building my career at that point, I'm now 32, I left the corporate world and started this business when I was 29. And I wish that I followed that plan then, because I would have been more open to, again, being self-aware, self-responsible, self-led. I would have been more open to seeing the signs of what my life was showing me, that what I was doing wasn't actually in alignment with my greater purpose, my vision, my ultimate freaking joy. Like, I would have seen that and I didn't. So that's what I would tell my younger self, is being open to receiving life's messages.
So powerful. I love that. Thank you so much, Tiff. I'm so excited for this episode to go live. So those of you that have, really got a lot of value from this, please share it on. Share it with someone that you feel would really benefit from the value that Tiff has dropped in this episode. Remember to tag us if you're going to screenshot and share your stories. We always love to hear and to see what it was that, what value it was that you took away from it. And feel free to reach out to us. As I said, Tiff has an incredible Instagram. Her DMs are always open, and she's someone that drops a lot of value on her Instagram as well. So go and check her out. Thank you so much for joining, Tiff, and I will be seeing you very soon, I'm sure.